how long is it going to take me to get out of debt? Because I want to be out of debt in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that, maybe even quicker. I don't want to be sat with this credit card for the next 10, 20 years, paying interest month on month on month. So, what do we do?
Let's talk a little bit about debt reduction. This is a critical element once you've established your budget. As soon as it balances, you need to immediately focus on debt reduction. If you have more debt now than you did a year ago or 10 years ago, that is an indication that all is not well in your finances. I've heard so many people kid themselves for too long, saying, well, I'm very good with my money. And I say, well, what debt have you got? And they reel off 20 grand's worth of unsecured debt. And I say, how much did you have 5 years ago? And they say, half as much. Let me tell you, if your debt is going up, you're not brilliant at managing money. You're not brilliant at getting debt off. But listen, you can be. The best way to motivate yourself to clear your debt is either a carrot or a stick, or probably both in equal measure. The stick. Life is not great with debt. Something we should really look to get rid of. We should be working towards to teach our children, and as couples be willing to pay the price to get ourselves debt free. It took me 9 years, but it was so worth it. It was so worth it. Listen, the feeling of not being in debt is wonderful. I'm not talking about paying your mortgage off. I'm talking about getting rid of all the unsecured debt, the credit cards, the loans, and saving up so that you don't have to get debt in the future. It is so worth it. And then there's a carrot. That's really easy. When you list down how much you're paying on your debts every month, just imagine what you could do with that extra income if you were debt-free. Can you imagine what life would be without that debt, without the sense of dread when you looked at what you owed? Stick and carrot, they really, really do work. And here's the truth. If you do not get your debt reduction sorted out, you will live a life in debt. It will hinder your life experience. It will cause you problems. And it could so easily spiral into something very significant. Problems that I experienced and thousands of others do every single year. You can do this. You must do this. So let's watch Matt Barlow, who's worked with me for many, many years, talking about how you can address your debt challenges.
Welcome to this session where we're going to be looking at the whole issue of debt and how we handle it and how we get out of it. We've all become aware over the last decade or so of how big an issue debt is here in the UK. Did you know that here in the UK we hold 2/3 of the total credit card debt for the whole of the EU? As a nation, we have been spending money that we don't have, and we need to do something to stop it and get out of it. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at two different types of situations: manageable debt and unmanageable debt. Manageable debt is where you have money that you owe, but you're able to afford your contractual repayments and work your way out of it. Unmanageable debt is when that isn't the case and you need some further help, and we're going to talk about that as we go through this session. But firstly, before we get on to the distinction, I want to really talk to you about kind of two different types of debt. So imagine that these pint glasses represent my debts. You can see I've got 4 that look the same and 1 that is very different. These are what we would call secondary debts. It's things like bank loans, credit cards, store cards. But this represents my priority debt. Now, the thing with priority debt is that if I don't do something about it, if I don't start to get it paid off, it has potentially serious consequences for my life. It may be some rent arrears, where if I don't pay those off, I'm at risk of eviction. It could be council tax arrears, which has even more serious consequences. It may be just a hire purchase, where if I don't keep on top of it and I don't get that debt cleared, I'm at risk of having a car repossessed or maybe a TV. And so when you are looking at your budget, when you're building your budget, it's really important that as you look at how to handle debt, you make sure you give time, attention, and ultimately some money from your budget to get these priority debts cleared. What I'm not saying is kind of use any spare money you've got to pay all of this off. Now, actually, if you have priority debt, it may well be that you need to get some advice. but general wisdom within the money advice sector, and if you go online and look for any advice online, it will be that you should take some of your money and you should apply it to getting these debts cleared, whilst also making sure that you are focusing on all of these debts. Right, let's put priority debt to one side and talk about these ones. So there are kind of two situations that you will probably find yourself in. And that is, firstly, manageable debt, which as I mentioned earlier, is where you're able to afford your contractual repayments. And secondly, unmanageable debt. Again, we'll come to that a little bit later. But a really important question to ask yourself as you're trying to work out, are my debts manageable and I can deal with this by myself, or are they unmanageable and I need some help? The really important question is the budget that I have built for myself manageable and sustainable? Because what you could do as you build your budget is you could cut everything back. You could cut your leisure budget back, you could cut your savings back, you could cut everything just so you can afford to pay these debts off. For a short period of time, that might well work for you. Maybe you could have 3 months or 6 months living on a really tight budget. But the truth is that normally to get debts like this cleared off, it's going to take you a few years. And the reality of living on a tight budget for a few years is that is a very hard thing to do. So you've really got to look at your budget and say, honestly, can I see myself living on this for a few years? If you can, then that's fantastic. It's likely that you have got a situation where you are in manageable debt. And let's talk now about how we get these debts reduced. So let's imagine that I'm in a position where I have manageable debt. I have a budget that I can afford to live on for a sustainable period of time. But actually I want to do something more than just pay the contractual repayments. I want to try and get these debts cleared a little bit quicker. Firstly, let me just say something about the whole contractual repayment thing. Say for example, this is a credit card. Now, it may well be that I can afford my contractual repayment on this credit card. However, credit cards set the contractual repayment so low most of the time that repaying it according to the contractual repayment, because of interest that is being added on top month after month after month, it can actually take decades in some cases to get that cleared. And so what I need to do is I need to sit down, I need to work out, if I pay my contractual repayment on this, how long is it going to take me to get out of debt? Because I want to be out of debt in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that, maybe even quicker. I don't want to be sat with this credit card for the next 10, 20 years, paying interest month on month on month. So, what do we do? Say that I've built my budget. I have a little bit of money left over after I've taken everything into account, I'm saving for the future, that sort of thing. How do I go about reducing my debt? So generally good advice is that when you're looking to clear debt is to consider which is the most expensive. You might be thinking, what on earth do you mean, Matt, by the most expensive? Well, different debts have interest calculated and applied in different ways. Imagine, for example, this is a big chunky bank loan. I got this out to do my kitchen out. And in some situations, big loans like this have the interest calculated and computed at the beginning of the loan. That interest is added to the loan, and as I go through the next 5 years, 10 years paying this loan off, there may be no more interest added on. I'm saying maybe because every product can be different, but there are plenty of products out there where no more interest will be added. And so this isn't costing me any extra. However, take the credit card, for example. Every single month, the bank comes along and it adds a little bit more to this debt. That's what it does. I pay a bit off, bank adds a little bit more. And that happens month on month on month with credit cards, with store cards, with a number of different financial products. So hopefully you can see that because this is having money added to it, interest and charges every single month, it's more expensive than this one here that isn't having anything extra added to it. So when I'm considering paying my debts off, the thing that is really important for me to do is to sit down and try and work out which is going to be the most expensive. Now, this is just some general advice. It may well be that you want to take further advice on how to clear your debts, but it's generally agreed within the money advice sector that if you can clear debts, why not go for the one that is going to cost you more over the longer term? It may be that if you clear this, there are financial benefits to clearing this. Maybe there are some rebates by doing early repayments. The important thing to do is to sit down and work the whole thing out for yourself. So that's one approach. Now the second approach, and I've seen numbers of people do this in my almost 16 years now of working in the debt industry. And that is, you simply want a sense of achievement. You've got all of these debts, you've got a bit of money left over, and actually you just would like to get one of these things off your back. It perhaps isn't the most kind of logical approach, but sometimes if it feels good, it gives us the motivation to keep going. So maybe we look at this small little debt, we take any extra money we've got, and we choose to get this thing cleared. And if only clearing debt was that easy. It may be you want to take that approach. We're not telling you what to do, we're just giving you some general advice on how you might want to get debts cleared. But if you do have any extra money left over once you've built your budget, then do everything you can to get these things cleared. I guarantee you as you do that, there'll be a great sense of satisfaction and it will really contribute to your long-term financial stability.